Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Saturday, May 17th, 2025. This is The Excerpt. Today, taking a look at the High Court's latest moves around the Trump administration and immigration, while we check in on what might be next for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Plus, what will this administration's relationship be like with Pope Leo XIV? And the popularity of self-driving robo-taxis is taking off. The Supreme Court yesterday continued to block the Trump administration from using a 1798 wartime law to deport a group of Venezuelan migrants who said they had not been given a real chance to fight their removal. In an unsigned opinion, the court said the migrants have not had enough time or information to protect their rights. And the court said that's particularly important because the administration asserts in another case that it's not able to bring back a man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador. That man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was at the heart of a hearing yesterday where a federal judge scolded the Trump administration. I spoke with USA Today reporter Michael Collins for more on that hearing and what might happen next. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
So what did we formally hear from this federal judge in this hearing?
What we heard was that the judge was really frustrated with the Trump administration. She had several weeks ago asked them to provide some details of what they are doing or not doing to bring home this man who is being held in a prison in El Salvador. She was very frustrated by what they have not done. She said that they have not provided the information that she asked for. She said they've not made a good faith effort to provide that information. And she said that their response in this case has been, in her words, an exercise in utter frustration.
Strong words. In terms of the response on the day from the Trump administration, what did we hear from their lawyers?
Well, they argued that they have provided the information that she requested, but the key issue here is that the administration wants to keep some information secret. It argues that the information that the judge is asking for, much of it involves state secrets, and if that information is made public, then U.S. national security could be in jeopardy. So they have filed a number of court documents in the case, but many of those are under seal, so we don't know what's in them.
And at some point, at any point, Michael, could the courts force them to unseal more of those documents? What's next on that point?
Yes. After the hearing on Friday, the judge cleared out the courtroom and asked the attorneys to stay. They talked about what was in those documents that are under seal. Now, what was said, we don't know because, as I said, everyone was asked to leave the courtroom and this was essentially done in private. The judge did say that she is likely to issue a ruling on what comes next in the next few days.
You know, Kilmar was last seen in April when Senator Chris Van Hollen met with him in Central America. We all saw photos of this meeting. Do we have any sense on how he's been doing since then, Michael?
We don't, because he has not been seen since that meeting with Senator Van Hollen. But during the court hearing on Friday, the attorneys for the government said that he remains in custody at a prison which is about an hour outside of San Salvador. They said he's in good health, and one of them added he's gained some weight. So they clearly want everyone to think that he is being treated well in the prison. We don't know that, though, because nobody has seen him since his meeting with Senator Van Hollen back in April.
All right. Michael Collins is a White House correspondent with USA Today. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Moody's has downgraded the nation's credit rating a notch, leaving the U.S. government without a top grade among any of the major rating agencies. Moody's cited rising debt and interest payment ratios that are significantly higher than similarly rated sovereign countries. The agency also noted the latest tax bill draft from the GOP would add about $4 trillion to the federal primary deficit over the next decade, and said it does not believe the proposal would result in material multi-year reductions in mandatory spending and deficits. For U.S. consumers, lower ratings could lead to higher borrowing costs. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. Vice President J.D. Vance will be in Rome this weekend for tomorrow's inaugural Mass of Pope Leo XIV. Vance will be watching with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, their wives, and other world leaders. For Trump and his team, the trip also could set the tone for the administration's relationship with the Vatican, which was strained under Pope Francis, something Duke theology professor Peter Casarella called a difference of principles. They, for instance, repeatedly clashed over immigration. Francis became pope in 2013 and spoke out when Trump was first running for president in 2016 and pledged to build a wall on the southern border. Francis said at the time that a person who only thinks about building walls, wherever they may be, and not about building bridges is not a Christian. Trump said that for a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful. Francis this year also criticized Trump's mass deportation plan, and Francis was a strong advocate for tackling climate change, which Trump has called a hoax. Whether his relationship with Leo will be different remains to be seen, but the new pope seems to share at least some of Francis's views. Leo said the dignity of migrants should be respected in his first address to world diplomats yesterday. Leo also shared criticism of Vance and Trump on social media prior to becoming pope. Fertility care coverage and childcare benefits are among the most expensive for companies, but they're also some of the most sought-after perks for millennials, who represent the largest segment of the U.S. workforce, and employers are noticing. Maven Clinic, a virtual clinic for women's and family health, recently surveyed more than 1,500 human resources leaders and nearly 4,000 full-time employees, and found 69% of employees have taken, considered, or might take a new job for better reproductive and family benefits. The same percentage of employers plan to increase their family health benefits vendors in the next 2 to 3 years. Gallagher, an insurance and employee benefits consulting company, produced similar findings in its own report when 63% of the nearly 700 employees surveyed said they would change jobs for better benefits. You can read more about this conversation in today's show notes. The popularity of self-driving robo-taxis is exploding in some U.S. cities. I spoke with USA Today national correspondent Elizabeth Weiss for more. Thanks for hopping on, Beth.
Happy to be here.
So I think depending on where you live, you might have seen these already. But for folks, especially in parts of the eastern U.S. where these maybe haven't rolled out yet, what are these driverless robo-taxis?
Yeah, so they are like everywhere here in San Francisco, Phoenix, Austin, LA. The ones that you'll see around are run by Waymo, which is a Google-owned company. They're actually electric Jaguars. They're very nice cars. And then they've got kind of all this wedding cake-esque stuff on top of them that is part of the system that allows them to drive without a driver.
All right, so have consumers been quick or slow to latch on to these, Beth?
So this is the fascinating thing to me and why I actually wrote this story, because 2 years ago, I wrote a story about how everybody in San Francisco is freaking out about them. You know, they're driving into crime scenes, they're getting in the way of firefighters, bicyclists are terrified, they're really dangerous, and it's just the end of civilization as we know it, which it often is here. And then I was actually out at a bar about a month and a half ago, and I was looking out at the street because we were outside, and I realized that probably every third person who was getting dropped off or picked up at the bar was not coming in an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi. They were coming in a Waymo. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That shifted really fast. So then I started doing interviews.
And you spoke with some folks who talked about the usefulness, right, Beth, of these services for their lifestyles. Just specifically, what were some of the things you heard from them?
The surprising thing to me was women love these things. And it's because they say, you know, I'm fine getting in an Uber or Lyft in the daytime, and I'm cool if I'm up with a bunch of friends. But if I have to get in a car late at night with some guy I don't know, I'm not so thrilled about it. And this is true. Pretty much any woman you talk to has got some story about a driver going back to taxi days, but Ubers and Lyfts too. I mean, it's not necessarily that they're harassing you, but they want to talk. They want to hear about your family. Do you have a boyfriend? What do you do for work? Oh, well, I don't think that's a good job for a woman. I mean, yeah, and sometimes you just don't want to have to deal with that. And that's what these women said. It's like, it's so restful to get in a car and not have to kind of steel yourself for that interaction.
You mentioned like this clunky early rollout, right? And the issues with fire trucks. What are some of the downsides at this point still?
So they have gotten a lot better. The software that they use has gone through multiple iterations. I think they're up to 6 now. They're just better drivers than they were. I mean, they were never really dangerous, but they're much smoother now. But the thing that everybody mentioned, men, women, everybody, is, one, they're still a little more expensive. They can be a lot more expensive depending on time of day, though people said, but you don't have to tip because there's no driver. And then there's a lot of them, but there are nowhere near as many of them as there are Lyfts and Ubers or taxis. And so sometimes you have to wait. And so a lot of people said, I'll check both apps on my phone. And if it's going to be 15 minutes, then I'll find another way home. But if it's going to be the same amount of time and just a little more money, I'll do a Waymo.
I do just want to mention drivers themselves here for a second. I mean, folks who drive for a living, be it in cabs or these rideshare services like Uber, I can't imagine, Beth, this shift is necessarily landing well with them, though I guess we're also still in a moment where both driver and driverless services can coexist, right? Do you hear anything from that side of the coin?
Realistically, there's maybe 1,500 of these cars on the roads in the United States at this point. So it's a drop in the bucket. It hasn't hit yet. I have no doubt it will.
In terms of the what's next, I guess it is just a matter of getting to more cities at this point, right?
Waymo's not the only company that's doing this. There's one called Zoox out of Amazon. They have these very cute they look like little beetles that wander around. Tesla, we hear, is also working on this. And then there's some companies in Europe. So Waymo's not the only one. It is expanding and will be appearing in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Miami by next year, presumably, unless the regulatory environment changes. Companies are throwing a lot of money at these things now with a theory that eventually they'll make money at the other side. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Elizabeth Weiss is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thank you, Beth.
Happy to be here. It's been fun.
And tomorrow morning, the pronatalism movement encourages people to have more kids. But could incentives like a baby bonus also be used to influence American culture?
The number one concern over people as to whether they should have kids and how many to have and when to have them is, can I afford it?
That's Karen Guzzo, a sociologist at the University of North Carolina. She spoke with my colleague Dana Taylor about pronatalism and how it might reshape the country. You can hear that conversation right here, beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for listening to the excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for the excerpt. As always, if you have any comments or concerns, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back Monday with more of the excerpt from USA Today.